Thanks for tuning in to the Boundless Authenticity podcast, where we discuss everything related to the evolution of human consciousness. This is episode 28, and I am honored to bring to you FLFE, or Focused Life Force Energy. I will speak with Clayten Stedmann, one of the creators of FLFE. I have been a customer for about a year now, and I constantly rave about the difference it has made in my life in all areas. What is FLFE? Focused Life Force Energy is a technology that activates a high consciousness field. It recreates the feeling and benefits of high consciousness sacred places. You can enjoy it in your home and business every day, and with FLFE everywhere, you can take the high consciousness field with you as you travel. How does it work? The FLFE system activates a high consciousness field anywhere, much like what can be found in places of worship or in pilgrimage sites where the focus of the teachings are love. A high consciousness field has positive energy and life benefits from it. The consciousness of a place can often be felt by a person, for instance, at an old battlefield or in a cathedral, mosque, or synagogue. We can create a field ourselves with focus and a positive intention. First, the FLFE system redirects and focuses life force energy. Life force energy, also known as subtle energy, chi, and prana, is a universal energy found throughout the universe. This positive energy is focused in a location within the FLFE system. This is similar to a person sitting down and moving into a focused meditative state in preparation for sending a prayer, Reiki, or a positive intention. Next, a unique identifier is introduced into the FLFE system, such as a legal address or coordinates for a property, a cellular phone number for a phone, or a high-resolution photograph for an object. This is similar to a person holding in mind the person or place where they are sending a prayer, Reiki treatment, or positive intention. We believe that the person with a positive intention and the FLFE system both activate a field at the person or location instantly anywhere in the world. The FLFE system next uses FLFE programs or instructions to specify the characteristics of the activated field, such as the level of consciousness of it and the positive intentions in it. The activated field becomes a high consciousness field. This is similar to a person holding a positive intention, emotion, or prayer in mind, which affects the field they created at a place or person in the previous step. What are the benefits? The FLFE field is activated by the FLFE system and amplified by additional FLFE devices or backup systems, which also create redundancy. The FLFE system redirects and focuses life force energy, also known as chi, prana, and mana, which is present throughout the universe. The redirection of the FLFE energy does not deplete or take away from any source of necessary energy at any time. The FLFE programs are written instructions activated by the FLFE field. Homes are associated with the FLFE field by the inclusion of a legal address or longitude and latitude coordinates into a program. This creates a quantum resonance from the FLFE technology to the home, and the activation of the FLFE field on the home begins instantly. In the case of the FLFE Everywhere service, a unique cellular phone number or a photo of the object provides the means of associating FLFE with the object. Currently, the FLFE field, when associated with a home or business, is designed to raise the level of consciousness of the area to a minimum of 560 on the Hawkins scale of consciousness within 5 seconds. FLFE is designed to clear the negative history from the land and any buildings to help you get a fresh start every day, free of any negative influence. The high vibration, high consciousness energy field enfolding the land and buildings supports the land to become more positive every day, your personal energy to be uplifted, and the potential for positive relationships to be enhanced. What the FLFE environment is not. The FLFE environment is not a panacea. The high consciousness FLFE supported environment will not solve your problems, remove your issues, or heal your bodies of its physical ailments. Some people do experience higher states of consciousness, a degree of relief from their problems and issues, and an increased capacity within their body to regenerate itself. However, no health claims are being made. It is not a place to avoid doing your personal work. It is an environment of accelerated consciousness raising. For those who are on a spiritual path, acknowledging that a spiritual path expresses in many forms including parenting, careers, education, and so forth, many of us value the opportunity to grow as much as anything else in our lives, if not more. The FLFE environment is not a place that is free of bad moods, bad habits, or personal struggles, including miscommunications, addictions, and the innumerable preoccupations of the mind. There will likely be times in an FLFE environment, even though it is extraordinarily high consciousness field and is extraordinarily rare in our current world and throughout history, when you will experience a life challenge which will ask you to call upon the spiritual warrior that resides in each of us. We see the spiritual warrior energy as an energy of love for all, including self, and the requirement of life for us to be disciplined, regulated beings that live in alignment with the laws of truth. Whether these laws are expressed through the effects of optimal health, loving relationships, financial solvency, and the ultimate freedom that lies within each of us as a potential that is enlightenment. Living in alignment with these laws results in these conditions just explained. It is to this end that the creators of the FLFE technology have dedicated the creation of the FLFE environment, the business that supports it, and the community that surrounds it. Visit flfe.net/evidence for evidence on how the FLFE service affects water, electromagnetic fields, 5G and Wi-Fi, the brain and heart, as well as energizes food. You can also tune into the Fields of Consciousness podcast with Jeffrey Stegman and Clayten Stedmann, the creators of FLFE. New episodes come out every other week, Tuesday at 11:11 a.m. PST. You are free to try the FLFE service with a free 15-day subscription, no credit card required. Let's hear what Clayten has to say. So, hey Clayten, how's it going?
Hey, John, it's going well.
Awesome. Glad to hear that. So today we are going to talk about the most awesome thing that I've ever came across in my entire life. And I actually found out about you guys from watching Regina Meredith. And I guess I trust Regina so much that I was like, I gotta check this out. And it was a very short video, actually, with you and Jeff talking about the experiments with water. And I immediately knew that I needed this in my life because where I live, without making it sound judgmental or anything like that, or like some kind of a consciousness snob, it's a very suppressed level of consciousness. The average person is in a bit of trouble with managing the way that things are. And I suppose the dominant emotions and stuff on the Hawkins scale are about 20, 30, 40 maybe. So it helps me a lot with trying to exist in that environment all the time because I don't want to leave. And I want to believe that by maximizing the capacity from my own consciousness, that it will spread out and it will impact people. And I just wanted to say before I ask my first question that I have seen a remarkable shift. At the very least, when people come onto my property to go to the beach, because I have a gap, which is actually my driveway, but it leads to the beach, and people go there every Sunday and on the evenings. And I see that as soon as they're on my property, their behavior changes somewhat. They're more kind, or if they're causing a ruckus, it immediately stops and they just quietly pass. So it's difficult not to notice those things. So I just wanted you to give us a quick rundown of what FLFE is and why it's so important that everybody has it.
Thank you. That's a great testimonial. We had when I was growing up, our house was at the end of a street. I was leaving the high school, and we used to have people cut through our yard because it saved them walking around the block. We were a few blocks from high school, and we used to cut through somebody else's yard sometimes to get to the road to our place. And we weren't always as well behaved. Either were the people that cut through our yard. So FLFE, it's endearingly called FLFE, it's kind of a nickname, I suppose. FLFE, say it enough, starts to sound like fluffy. So it's a technology that you would call it it works through the principle of quantum association, where we have a machine that has a high consciousness field within the technology that we can influence the quality of, and we associate the property or an object with that high consciousness field in the machine. And so the property, in your case, Jahan, takes on the qualities of the high consciousness field we create. And typically, you have a consciousness slider. If you try this service, you can slide the consciousness up and down. But it typically starts at 550 as a default. And we use the Hawkins Map of Consciousness. That's a map of consciousness created by Dr. David Hawkins. He wrote 9 books when he was alive. I think 2 got published after he passed. He had a couple of other versions of books, but anyway, he wrote a lot of books. He was a psychotherapist, had a huge practice in New York at one point, and 50 people worked with him. And he wrote a book he's most known for is Power versus Force. That's the first one I read. So if you're interested in looking at Dr. Hawkins' work, you can look at Power versus Force, or just look for his map of consciousness. It's on the Veritas Pub website. You can buy it off of there. So 550 on the Hawkins map is in the area of universal love or unconditional love. The Hawkins map of consciousness goes from 1 to infinity, where 1 to 1,000 is the human realm. And each level of consciousness has a certain number of microwatts of electricity contained in that environment. And if a person's at a certain level, they have an equivalent number of microwatts of electricity of positivity in their body. So it's a little bit of a long story, but there's a couple of kind of benchmarks for us as we continue the conversation.
Okay, cool. That's
it's cool technology.
Yeah, it's very cool. Quantum association definitely sounds very very technical. And you said that it associates the property or object. So I haven't tried the property service or the object. I actually have FLFE everywhere. So on my phone.
Yes, that would be so the object would be the phone in that case. You can also take a picture of an object, like a necklace or a ring or something. But yeah, so FLFE everywhere is what you have then with the phone. Okay.
And it just directs the energy at the object. Like if it's a ring or something, you can take it everywhere with you. Okay, that's really great.
Yeah, it puts a 300-foot bubble of energy around it.
That sounds good to me. Well, that's one of the things that I find to be extremely remarkable about this service, because I'm just using it on my phone, and yet, like I said, it has that profound effect on everything outside of it. I actually, let's talk about the Pay It Forward service, because I actually used one of them to create a high consciousness area for my chickens. And what I do want to say is that since using it for almost a year, what I've seen in that area in my yard where I've put that is that there's massive plant growth. Trees that were planted 50 years ago with dead wood grew new branches. Fruit trees started bearing out of season. I have a massive sugar apple tree in my yard, and that began to sprout new branches all over it where it was very sparse before, and that bared fresh fruit. And I've some of the biggest fruit I've ever seen on it, and it continued doing that for 6 months out of season. A papaya tree that I had grew 12 feet tall in 6 months and started bearing. I have a cherry tree. It's the acerola cherry, and it bears fruit out of season as well and it's abundant. I mean, there's so many cherries just falling out of the tree. You can smell it when you wake up. Cherries have fallen and hit the ground. I find my chickens lay eggs every day as a result of this, where before, because of the temperature, chickens tend not to lay a lot when it's too hot, but every day one of them lays something. And my animals are more at peace. I have turtles, dogs, cats. I've found that, especially with the cats, where they've been so territorial, that they react differently to each other. So, a lot of stuff has changed significantly that I just cannot ignore. Though even the water in my fish tank stays fresher for longer. I actually have guppies that I call Jeff's children, or the fluffy guppies. Because when they were born, I had them on my desk in a little bowl while I was watching one of your webinars. And as soon as they came out, they each individually swam towards the screen while Jeff was talking, almost as if they were saying, "Are you my dad?" So that's why I call them the fluffy guppies, or Jeff's children. It just seems to have an amazing effect on everything around it. And that's only on my phone. And so I wanted to say that and ask you about having the object or the everywhere service plus on the home. Does it make the level of consciousness more powerful than that?
That's a good question. It doesn't add up like the phone actually calibrates at 580, and then around within 4 feet of the phone, it gets 575. And then at 300 feet, if I recall correctly, it's 555. Now, what's different about the home and the phone or the object is that the home service, it clears the negative energetic history of the land. Now, the phone service will do that, but not to the same degree. Like the phone service alone, or the FLFE everywhere service, takes about 2,000 times as much energy as the home service to make work. Because the phone service is oftentimes moving, right? So you get your car, you go somewhere, for the technology to associate with the moving object. And in the case of your cell phone, it's associated to your phone. And it's based upon the principle of unique identifier, because your phone number is the only phone number that there is in the world in that area code. So if you go on the website and you do a free trial, you just enter your phone number into, the box, the dialog box, And once you save it, it takes a few seconds and it starts to activate on that phone. It's really simple to use from a user point of view. And if you haven't tried it, you should try the home service, because it will, like if your property isn't at 550 yet, then it will bring it up to 550, and you can slide it up to 570 on the consciousness slider. You can slide it down to as low as 400. And you can do the boost as well. We have a temporary 600 boost on the home service. On the phone, it's 650. On the home, it's 30 minutes. On the phone, it's 10 minutes, because the home takes a lot more energy. The phone takes a lot more energy. So that's the big difference. And with the phone, it doesn't mean every object in that 300-foot bubble will be at somewhere between 575 and 555. It just means that's the energy that the technology is creating around it. And it's the same as the pay it forward. The pay it forward, or the PIF, if you sign up for a subscription, then we give you a pay it forward service that stays wherever you put it for as long as we have the business. That might be, hopefully, that's a long time, because if we're alive, we'll keep the business. So it could be 30, 40, 50 years maybe. And that's the service part of what we do. And that energy is sent out at 500. So if your property, say, if you're in a 180 neighborhood, the property might go up to 210 or 220 or 300. It's hard to say, depends on what's going on. But it won't go to 500, because it's being sent out at 500, so it'll compensate for some of the lower energy on the land. But the home service will take it to 550 out of 1,000 on the Hawkins map, guaranteed 90% of the time over a 24-hour period, or you get it for free till we fix it. And we've only had 2 people that we haven't been able to get their properties to 550 in the 8, almost 9 years now that we've had the service. We probably had 50,000 people try it. So it's very rare that we don't get something to level. And we check it. We check it when you come on the service, and then we check everything once a week. Make sure they're at level.
Awesome. I'm definitely going to upgrade to the property service.
You get a 2-week free trial and give it a go. And see.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the most important thing that we need to say here. There's a free 15-day trial, no credit card required. And I am telling you, people, you have to go and try this. You're not going to lose anything by trying it. I remember the first 5 minutes of having it on my phone. I practiced mindful breathing. I consider myself at a pretty decent level of doing it. And I didn't even realize that I could enjoy breathing that much. And that was the way that I sensed that it was on. It's just very powerful. And it automatically directs my awareness to the sensation of the air passing through my nasal passageway. And it keeps me in a constantly, I guess I would say, a really great level of conscious awareness all the time as a result. So, anybody that has a yoga practice that they want to enhance, or they're a meditation fanatic or a teacher of some kind, definitely get it. I see that people feel calmer around me, and they are more willing to open up when I'm doing more things that are rooted in like psychotherapy and stuff like that with my clients. I find it's been a tremendous tool. And I wanted to ask you a couple of questions about how does FLFE help with our relationships?
Well, any high consciousness field helps reduce the influence of what we call the mind or the ego. And many people that are on the service or try the service notice that their thoughts are different. And as we evolve, our thoughts become more compassionate, which, typically understanding is the doorway to compassion. So if you're talking Hawkins work, if the technology can help you move your consciousness up or keep you in a more loving state, then you're more resourceful. So the higher your level of consciousness, the more resourceful you are in terms of, we'll say, consciously connecting with somebody else and managing the tendency of our mind to want to analyze and judge and create separation. And in our education system, we need to learn to analyze and judge and create distinctions. Engineers, we count on them for that. When we get to a plane, I used to be a little bit unsettled when I got to a plane, and I would just start thinking of I know a couple of guys who are engineers and the standards they have to adhere to. I just start thinking, thank you, engineers. So just it helps the mind calm down, which helps you open your heart. I mean, so one of the programs, we call them programs in the field of FLFE. That's what we create in the machine. We make these requests to divinity through writing down like prayers, and we found a way to include that in the field we create in the technology, and so that gets associated into the environment, either around the home or around an object such as a phone. And one of the qualities that we ask to be in the environment is we ask that all the chakras in the body are aligned, and we explain the highest teachings we can of that in the programs. We ask for people to have compassion for each other, for men to understand the gift of women and of men, for women to understand the gift of women and men, our gift to each other. And we have all these requests to divinity between not only men and women, but mothers and fathers, and children and mothers, children and fathers, all the kind of obvious variables you can imagine. Tolerance for each other's beliefs. So there's a lot of stuff going on there that helps us be more of our authentic selves. I happen to believe that humans are partly divine and part animal, and it's nice to see the divine part show up more often than not.
I think I could agree with that. I have found, like, if I go to the store or something, you can always tell, since Fluffy's been on, who is not in alignment with a high level of consciousness. Like, they'll literally leave the room. They'll get out of the way. And then other people who ordinarily just wouldn't talk to you tend to gravitate towards you, and everybody's nice. And it's like, this thing works, doesn't it? I mean, I really do enjoy it, because I think that, it's not, I'm not saying that because it's about me and how I benefit from it specifically. It's that being around these people, I think that they also deserve to have a taste of what that higher level of consciousness is like. And it's really nice to see people's entire body language and demeanor shift in an instant. And I've seen some people that I'm pretty sure that that's the first time in a day that they've smiled or felt like, they were connected. So I think that's really awesome. And I know it does a lot for people's health and stuff like that. I was wondering if you could tell us more about that and get into the effects of Fluffy on plants and animals, and what exactly is involved there.
Yeah, well, you gave a great testimonial for plants. We actually did a study with Dr. Emoto. I think that's the one you've seen with Regina. Mm-hmm. And his son, Hiro Emoto, is still running his lab. I think his name's Hiro, Hiro. And we sent a vial of water with an FLFE field on it to Japan. They froze it, cut it up into slivers, like they shave a bit off, and they take pictures of it. Like, if you haven't seen Dr. Emoto's books, just go online and search Dr. I think it's Masuro, Masuro. I'm not sure, but if you just search Dr. Emoto's pictures, you'll see these wonderful geometric images of frozen water crystals. And so when we had the FLFE service on a water bottle, we compared it to the standards in Dr. Emoto's work. So Dr. Emoto's work, he has these standards where he would take a piece of evidence. He would write all these words on these water holding beakers, and he would freeze it and take a picture of the water crystal, and they had their own unique shape, which denotes the intelligence within that thought, which is pretty deep, right? That's pretty deep. So we did that with FLFE, and the image that came out was halfway between kind of love and truth. If you look at the love one and the truth one, we're sort of halfway in between. So that's called structured water. It's one of the ways you can define structured water. So so when you're in an FLFE environment, for example, plants, we just finished a 10,000 acre organic farm study, Jihan. I don't know if you've heard about it, where we measured the amount of yield per acre for acres of grain, in this case, that were on FLFE and the ones that weren't. And it was randomized in such a way that the farmer didn't know. Their technology can measure the amount of grain per acre that comes off in the yield. It's very sophisticated machinery. And it was between, I'm going to say the average is 27% more grain per acre. Well, the one thing we didn't manage to do this year was, measure the quality of the grain, like the protein, percentage of protein and other nutritional profiles, but that's what we're planning to do this year. So there's, so that's on the website under FLFE.net. If you go to research, the research tab, you can look at we've done quite a bit of research on the effect of the high consciousness FLFE field and how it affects environments such as plants. And, high consciousness fields in general tend to have those same characteristics. It's just that we thought we needed to do the research on our particular technology so that people felt more comfortable and were willing to try it, because it's kind of unusual, right? So when your body has all this extra energy, your body is innately intelligent and will do with the energy what it needs to do to be healthier. And sometimes, that means you'll have a little what's called a Herkheimer's response. If I'm saying that right. So sometimes in the process of getting healthier, you have a little healing crisis. But for the most part, if you pay attention to your hydration, and we recommend you drink, like most doctors will say, drink half your body weight in ounces a day. So if you're 150 pounds, drink 75 ounces of water a day. That's the one thing we notice, that if people don't stay hydrated, they don't feel the benefits as much, because we have it like a dimmer switch. If you're dehydrated, it starts to turn it down, so that you don't get thrown into a healing crisis. So that's a few of the things around the benefits for plants and individual health. But if you have a specific one, I can try to go deeper.
I want to know more about the hydration, because I find that I need to stay very well hydrated. And if I'm away from liquids for like an hour or so, I start to feel very dehydrated and maybe a little bit grumpy.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I mean, my assumption is that, and I guess the estimates that I've read from other people, is about 80% of the population is chronically dehydrated. It's just part of the world we live in. We forget that water is our most important food.
Yeah.
And, most people know we're 70% water, but it is easy to forget that. So when your body, because our bodies are so intelligent, it's easy to forget that we're living in a miracle, which is our body, because it's with us all the time. We don't have to do a lot of things to maintain it. But the amount of biochemical and electrical impulses that happen in our body every day is really staggering, just to try to understand it. And it needs water to communicate with itself. And especially in a high consciousness field, there's an opportunity for accelerated healing and an opportunity for a more optimal state of being, which includes our health. So water is key to that. And, in terms of our subscribers, probably 40% of people are hydrated. It's better than average. We talk about it a lot to the point where it gets a bit, it gets old just talking about hydration all the time. And I struggle with it too. I just have to pay attention. And I recently found kind of a hack. I'm excited to share this with you. I bought some aloe vera juice. And when I'm testing myself for hydration, I do kinesiology where you kind of take a fold of your skin and you pinch it and you pull it up. I don't know if you can see it. Like I pull it up and then I test like this. And if I'm dehydrated, I'll go weak. So that's how I test. There's a few ways to test. You can pull hairs up on your arm. You can pull a flap of skin. You can test yourself with kinesiology. So I started experimenting with ways to get hydrated quicker, because if I get dehydrated, then, kind of drinking all this water and then 10 or 15 minutes, I start to feel better. But then I'm, going to the bathroom a lot. So what I do now is I drink a glass of aloe vera juice, and that seems to get my hydration up really quick. And then I get some water in me, and that keeps it high. And I just don't seem to go to the bathroom as much. I don't know what that's about. But that's a recent thing in the last 2 weeks that Jeff and I have figured out. And what we've also concluded was that, so there's these things in our bodies called thirst receptors. And when we're chronically dehydrated, we just don't have the desire to drink water. And when we get really well hydrated, we want water. We want it. It tastes good. We desire it. So the paradox of it is that when you're already well hydrated, you desire water more. And when you're dehydrated, you tend not to want to drink it. So you have to discipline yourself. Like, for some people, they put, that half their body weight in water on a counter in a couple of jugs. I got a couple clear glass jugs. And when I need to get on my hydration, I fill them up in the morning, and, I have them on my desk, or I have them where I'm going to be. And it's like, okay, it's really simple. Those 2 jugs they still got water in them. I'm not done. So just keep drinking the water. And a lot of people also find that if they put a little bit of sea salt in the water, about a 1/4 teaspoon per liter, depends, but something around there, that it helps hydrate them, because it becomes like an electrolyte then. Depends how good your water is. But that's a kind of an idea as well. You can try.
That is very cool about the thirst receptors. I did not know that.
Oh yeah, it's amazing, man.
Yeah. One of the things that caught my attention was that I started with the free trial. And again, to remind everybody, if you're not sold yet, go try this thing. There's no credit card required. Literally just pop it on your phone or something and you'll be a happy camper. I noticed that I left my water bottle uncovered just to see what would happen. And it had just an energy about it. And I compared it, by turning off the service and testing it out. And it does restructure the water. It does give it life that it didn't have before. And I was very pleased about that. So, I would keep it just for that.
Yeah. Well, that's why we got the Emoto thing, because we knew something was going on. We were trying to find a way to measure it. And when we did the research on how to create the optimal water within the limits of the technology, right? Yeah, we did a lot of research on different types of water, ionizers and, microclustering technologies and reverse osmosis and activated carbon charcoal filters and certain water machines. They spin the water in a negative direction to kind of clean all the energy out of it, because when the water flows through the pipes in a city, it starts to pick up the energy of the city. And not all that energy may be what you want to, drink. So there's technology out there that'll spin it counterclockwise, which takes all the energy out. Then it spins it clockwise, and it has sacred geometry on it, and prayers, and it energizes the water. So we try to include all that in the service. And when we first wrote the water program, Jihan, it took 1% of the energy of the entire machine to do one property. It took that much energy. And then I had to upgrade the machine. It took that much power to change it to the degree that we can change it, which we've proven through the Dr. Emoto evidence.
Awesome. I love that. So I want to talk about the mitigation, specifically of the EMFs and the clearing of history on the land. And I have to ask about this because I feel a tremendous difference since activating the service. Even on the free trial, I felt there was like something was happening, because I have screens around me all the time. I spend a lot of time in here as a creative, recording music or talking to clients on Zoom and doing research and stuff. So I'm constantly in front of my computer. And when the service isn't activated, I've turned it on and off to test. The energy is much clearer. I feel a lot less weighed down and like foggy headed and stuff like that. And outside my window, there was surely some kind of geopathic stress, and not to get too far into that territory, but like entity related happenings. The history of this land is rooted in bloodshed, to keep it simple. A lot of slavery and stuff happened, and in past times there were the indigenous people, so the Caribs and the Arawaks, those Amerindian people would fight between each other before the Western world got here and took over. And so there's still a bit of that imprint on the land. And I noticed that over weeks, that staleness of energy cleared up as well. So I wanted you to talk about that, because that's a lot of stuff that people, even working with my clients and stuff, they say they feel like there's stuff in their house that just belongs to the house and they don't know how to get rid of it.
Yeah, well, thoughts are things. And in some native traditions, they talk about, well, in many sort of different religions, they talk about storing energy in crystals. When you have lots of energy and things are good, you kind of store it in a crystal, and then when things aren't so good, you retrieve it. So I'm not really familiar with that technology. I have friends who will pray into a crystal, and then where they have an altar and they have crystals on it, and then when they're trying to sort something out or they're struggling, they'll pick up the crystals and ask for that energy back. I mean, it can be that simple. But the land stores the energy of the experience that happens on the land. So when I talk about the native traditions, because they tend to have a better relationship with the earth. I think the natives, the Native North Americans, for example, and the Inuit here in Canada up north, and Eskimos, I guess, Alaska too, and different parts of the world, they just, they have a different relationship with the land. I guess if we lived out in the bush and for generations and generations, we might have that same relationship. But I know that I've met hunters who they've talked about when they hunt, when they go into an area, they turn the rocks over in the area, and they say that on the underside of the rocks, you can see the images of the animals that are in the area. And that helps them understand what to look for. in their when they're out getting food. So in our homes, we have drywall, most of us, or concrete foundations, and that's a form of crystal, right? So it holds the thoughts, it holds the energy. And if you ever go into a battlefield or, like on a tour, or you go on an old prison tour, it feels heavy. Most of the time, it feels heavy. You feel that heaviness in an area where there's a lot of conflict. You'll feel heaviness. I mean, our bodies, again, are really extraordinarily sensitive. And some people are more sensitive than others. We have people that are, some people will go to like a Reiki treatment and they won't feel anything. And other people, like maybe you're a sensitive type, Jihan, you'll really feel it maybe when you go to a Reiki treatment or some energy treatment. And other people won't. And we need the real sort of thick-skinned people because they got their place in the world. But there's some people go into a low vibe area and they just start to feel all the things that happen there, right? When I think every house I've lived in for the last 15 or 20, maybe almost 20 years now, I've always had it feng shuied if I've been there for a year. And we've had feng shui people come in and talk about low spots in the house and high spots. They have a way of measuring it, usually through muscle testing. And sure enough, those areas of the house people don't spend time in. They just don't feel as good, right? They'll just tend to sit on the other side of the room or whatever. So that's the human influence. So we believe if there's been a war or a conflict in an area, that the memory of it the memory of it will stay there, but the trauma may not. So a higher consciousness field or a blessing on the land, if done properly, will start to dissipate the negative part of the memory. So with FLFE and those programs we talk about that are in the high consciousness field part of the machine, they're request to divinity, a request to God, the creator of all it is. And we found out that when we were testing our customers' properties every week, that the odd customer, they started having, like the properties would go down from say 550, they'd be at 540. So we would call them up and say, well, geez, your property's starting to drop. And some people noticed it. And then we would ask them, well, what's changed in your house? Has anything changed? Like the level of consciousness dropping. And, they were getting it for free unless we figured it out. So we were motivated, right? And they would say that, oh, well, I just had a new smart meter put in on my house, or I just put a new router, or there was a new cell phone tower put up across the street, or a 5G tower went in the neighborhood a block down, on the corner. And so we realized that some of these electromagnetic influences were actually dropping the level of consciousness of a property. So we considered that a geopathic stress zone or a geopathic stress influence, particularly electromagnetic fields. I'll talk more about other geopathic stresses in a moment. Most people think of geopathic stress as like a stream running underneath the house, and that's true. It is one. So we looked at how to deal with electromagnetic influences. So what you can try to do is you can try to block it, right? Just deflect it back or anywhere. But then you're deflecting it onto somebody else, right? And it's accumulating there because if you're deflecting it, it's kind of going back to that area. Or if it's coming through an area and you deflect it back, then they get like twice. You can try to dissipate it so it goes out like everywhere and doesn't really focus on one area if it's going back. You can try to deflect it into the earth, right? Or up into the sky in particular. You can try to direct it into one place where you don't think it will do any harm. You can try to ground it into the earth. And then we heard these other people who were talking about trying to harmonize it or take it and make it positive, which is very much an Aikido move, right? You take the energy of the aggressor and you use it against them. So we were intrigued by the idea of harmonizing or harmonization. And we started researching on how this could be done. And we came across people doing materials research on using materials to transform negative electromagnetic fields into positive fields. and we came across a substance called Shungite. Now, that was the only substance that we tested in all of, when we tested literally thousands of substances and combinations of substances. It's the only substance that we found that would take a negative electromagnetic energy and make it positive. So then we had to try to find a way. We were looking for, how do we include this in the service? Do we ask people to buy Shungite? What do we do? And then we found out we could take the energetic essence of Shungite and put it into the environment. Now, Shungite is used in some Chinese medicines, and the energetic essence of things is a principle that's held in. It's really held in the area of what's that subtle medicine where they take a homeopathy? That's what it is. So they kind of use the energetic medicines of things. They take a substance and they dilute it and dilute it and dilute it, and so it has the energetic medicine or the energetic essence or signature of the substance, but very little of the substance. So we did that with the energy of negative electromagnetic fields, and the level of consciousness of the properties went up right away. And it took us 6 months to figure out how to do it. And then we found out other people were taking pieces of Shungite, and you can try this, for yourself. If you know a place that doesn't have FLFE on it, which is, most of the world, and they have smart meters, you can put a plant next to a smart meter, and typically the plant will grow away from the smart meter and shrivel. We put a piece of Shungite on the smart meter, like the size of a silver dollar, and put that on the smart meter. The plant will typically, the ones that I've seen, have grown towards the smart meter, and they seem more energized. They seem more live. So that's the kind of research you can do at home. We worked with a lady named Melissa Waterman, who was part of Joe Dispenza's team. She was using a device called the gas discharge visualization device with a Sputnik attachment. And she would measure the amount of entropy in an environment, which is chaos. And when we put the FLFE service on the property that she was testing, that the amount of chaos went down in the environment. And that was related to, the only thing that was different about that was the energetic signature of Shungite. So last thing I'll say about Shungite is that when we measure EMFs, we're measuring a pretty subtle energy influence. And the only device we could find that was able to measure the subtle energy influence of FLFE was the gas discharge visualization machine. So if we use tri-field meters and other commonly used EMF devices or EMF measuring devices, they don't recognize any difference when FLFE is on. At least they didn't the last time we checked. So we had to go to a more sensitive technology. So we're pretty evidence-based, and so just to tell you how to manage your expectations around that.
That's awesome. I've seen Melissa Waterman talking with Regina about the experiment on the GDV.
Yeah, and, GDV,
the Kirlian photography and stuff, and it was awesome. It's talking about the FLFE stuff. And so my question is, if you have Shungite around your house already, does it amplify the effect of Fluffy?
Not that we're aware of. It seems that we're able to get enough of it in the environment to compensate for what's there and what's coming in as well. So if you have a 5G tower or something in the neighborhood, that's the science that Melissa demonstrated.
That's pretty cool. And I'm curious about the University of Arizona experiments on how it affects the food crops.
Yes. So we do have a research tab on our website, and there's a lot of research there. We have a couple of people that work for the University of Arizona. They have a consciousness research department at the University of Arizona, which is really well known. And we're lucky enough to have two people from the university assist us with running experiments and having them done according to the scientific process. So it's a high scientific standard. And because our technology is quite nonlinear and unusual, we wanted to find, multi-degreed, professional, well-regarded experts in their fields assist us in demonstrating the positive benefit of a high consciousness field and things within that field, like Shungite. So we have two gentlemen from the University of Arizona that are associated with it, Dr. Gary Schwartz and Lewis Humphreys. And they helped us create the protocols to test the efficacy of the FLFE service on different types of food. The one we have just finished most recently is a study with sprouts. Sprouts grow really quick, so they're a great plant to test. If you plant a cherry tree and have to wait 3 years to get your first cherry, that's a long time. But with sprouts, they were noticing a 257% increase in the growth rate of a sprout. And so that's on the website. It's a pretty rigorous bit of research, and you can read all about it there. And there's more data than I find necessary, but these guys are scientists, so they go deep on it.
That's awesome. So for all the listeners, definitely check out FLFE.net and go read the research. And check out that 15-day free trial. It's, I have to keep saying that because I believe in this product. I've seen so many, what I would consider off the wall things happen. Like I used to work out four days a week and work out pretty hard. And I noticed that when I turned on Fluffy within weeks, I am now able to exercise 6 days a week and I don't get as tired. My muscles recover. And a lot of the workouts where I'm doing extreme progressive overload, I won't get delay onset soreness. I'll feel like I did something, but I no longer get that effect. And it has to be affecting me on a cellular level. It has to be Fluffy because that's the only new thing that has happened. So I really believe in this service from so many different directions and so many different experiences. We got to talk about the elephant in the room. And first, I'm going to address, what does freedom and sovereignty mean to you guys in your mission? How does Fluffy help people break free from, I guess we call it the matrix these days, and, that kind of thinking?
Well, higher levels of consciousness are directly correlated to freedom. There's a lot of energy in anger. There's a lot more energy in anger than there is in despair or fear. And for some people, anger is an upgrade. Anger calibrates to 150 on the Hawkins Map of Consciousness. So on the Hawkins Map, the human realm, again, is 1 to 1,000. Despair or apathy calibrates around 50. Fear is around 100, anger is around 150, courage is 200, willingness is 350 on that map, 500 is love, 540, 550 is unconditional love, 600 is peace, right? So higher levels of consciousness are associated with more freedom. And in Hawkins' work, I think it's page 282 in the back of the first edition of Power versus Force, he has a chart called the Consciousness Compensation Chart. And the numbers change from time to time, but at the time of the publishing on the book, if I remember correctly, he talks about one person at 500 on the Hawkins, on the map of consciousness, which is pretty well researched, by the way, and it's done through muscle testing. One person at 500 counterbalances for over 750,000 people below 200. So one loving person who is taking action from a place of love is not only taking action, but they're compensating for a lot of negativity. And the idea of freedom is a big conversation in our world today, and it should be. There's there's some people who have there's lots of different views of life and how we should run our world, right? I mean, as many people as there are, there's probably as many views. But there are groups of people, very powerful, unelected groups of people, who believe that only a few select groups or select people should manage the affairs of the rest of the world, that should manage the affairs of nations. And there's a lot of people that don't agree with that. And that's a big conversation in our world today. I don't know if it's the biggest one because we have the situation with Russia and Ukraine happening. And those tend to take a lot of our attention because it's obviously a very, potentially dangerous situation for the level of peace that we do have on the planet. So higher levels of consciousness are associated with more freedom. And from a place of acting from a loving understanding, you're more powerful than when you're just acting from anger. So if you want to help the world, become a loving person of action whose intent is to see individuals have their own individual freedom and sovereignty and the ability to choose what happens with their life.
Cool. I like that. I think that's a heavy topic that more people need to take an honest look at, and I've certainly been contemplating it and trying to induce some critical thinking about that.
I mean, we're kind of talking around the same subject. I don't know if we'll really get into, who's trying to control what.
Yeah, but not on this show. This is about
it's just
solutions.
It's not the focus of, when Jeff and I made this agreement. There's lots of people out there who know more about that than we do, who research it more than we do, who can talk about it with more clarity and more delineation of details and processes and who's doing what. There's more than enough people talking about that. So we wanted to be on the side of what can we do to empower ourselves as individuals, and how do we be, happy, productive people who contribute to the world. And so I think we're on the same page as you.
Yeah, well, Fluffy will definitely aid you in processing the difficult questions and emotions that go along with that. And so my final question for you, Clayten, is along those lines. What about the current pandemic situation and like in the Ukraine? Let's talk about what happened with global consciousness from the start of COVID until this point. And how does the high consciousness field help cope with the energy and the emotions, etc., of the climate? How does it help with the recovery from toxins in the air? Because, we can't ignore chemtrails. How does it help with colds and flus and other viruses? I think we've got about 10 minutes left.
Let's start with health first of all, and we'll go back from there. There's places in the world that are known for different environments, we'll call them, and that's a pretty wide brush. So there's pilgrimage sites that people travel to from around the world to go because of the energy of the area that creates change in their life. They're really going for the change. They're not really going for the energy, but the energy is there that helps the change. And those pilgrimage sites, the positive ones in the world, they're high consciousness areas. This is what it is. There's lots of positive energy. Now, some of those places are known for abundance. Some are known for health. Some are known for fertility. Some are known for connecting with a certain deity. There's lots of different pilgrimage sites around the world that have their own history to them and their own, we'll call them non-linear experiences, or some people call them miracles. It's like, this doesn't make any sense, So FLFE creates a high consciousness field. I don't know if it's the same as the pilgrimage sites where millions of humans have gone for, maybe tens of thousands of generations. It's hard to know sometimes. I'm not saying we create that level of possibility, but there is a high consciousness field, and it does help the body become more resilient, including, we believe, and we're looking at ways to prove this, a healthy, resilient body. If you put a human being in a high consciousness energy field, if you give it decent nutrition, which includes water, it automatically knows what to do to become more healthy. And part of good health is good immunity. And so we believe that we should focus on our own individual immunity, because the body is amazing, and it can manage these things that come and go in our world. And we're not saying you shouldn't take any medicine. We're not giving any medical advice here. And the first place we want to look to for our own health is the responsibility we have of taking care of our body and keeping it strong and vital. And so that's the health part. A lot of people, when they're on the service, they report they just don't have the same issues. Things go away that they've had for years, or issues they have, go away for years. And we have lots of people who exercise consistently, and they know the difference when the service is on and when it's off in terms of recovery and performance. We've been talking to a couple athletes right now to try to do a before and after on strength testing in terms of how much they can endure, and in terms of sets and reps and weights. So that's sort of the Coles Notes version on the health. We could talk about health for a couple hours. In terms of the level of conscious of the world went over 200 on the Hawkins map, or into the level of integrity, for the first time in history in around 1987. On our website, there's a piece of research where we went back 3,000 years and tested the level of consciousness of the planet over that time. In 2019, in the fall, the last quarter of 2019, between October and the end of December, the world was at the highest level it has ever been, which was in the kind of low 240s on the Hawkins map. Now, if you go back through history, you'll find ancient civilizations where the level of consciousness was quite high in an area, but what we're talking about the whole planet. So there's certain cultures in the past, such as the Mohawk Confederacy had 300 years of peace, right? So they had a high level of consciousness there. They had high teachings, and different areas were high, but we're talking about a whole planet. When COVID got announced in, I think it was March, the world dropped to in March, it dropped to 150. In April, when there was so much uncertainty in the world about what was going to happen, it actually went to 100, which is fear. 150 is anger. And then it started to go up, and it's been going up and down since, April 2019. That was the lowest part. When different variants have come out, the world typically drops. The world was getting over 200 again, say 6 months ago. And so we're in the middle of, the beginning of April here, April 6th, 2020. So when the Ukraine situation started, the world went down to about 150. Typically when there's a war in the world, and it's a fairly large conflict, and a lot of people know about it, a lot of people are paying attention to it. Typically, the world goes to 150, which is anger. Obviously, war is probably going to be around anger on the Hawkins map. So that's kind of the Coles Notes version of the recent couple years. Does that give you what you need for that?
Yeah, that's pretty interesting information. Yeah. Thank you so much, Clayten. That's all the questions I have for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know I forgot to talk about geopathic stress zones, but we are able to compensate for things like underground streams and things of that nature. So if your property has the history of people getting sick on it, sometimes there is a geopathic influence there that isn't supportive of life. So you may want to, if you do the free trial, you may want to pay attention to that.
Absolutely. And I do encourage everybody to check out that free trial. So thanks again, Clayten. And this has been really awesome. I'll have to get you to come on with Jeff so you can show us some more of your research and talk more about that in depth later on.
Yeah, we got some more stuff in the pipeline, as they say. So I appreciate you taking the time to ask the questions.
Absolutely. It has been my honor, Clayten.
Okay. Take care.
You too.